Hello Bookwolves, my name is Cam and I'm here today with this week's writing tip video. Today's topic is one of the most criticized things in writing, and that is romance. Urgente. Roll that intro. Today I'm talking about something that is written about in a lot of books, and it's something that is always criticized when it's involved in writing, and that is romance. It can be something that's really tricky to nail and get right, and it's not something I think I've got expertise on, not something I think I've mastered, but I definitely feel like I've got some tips that can help make your romance in your book readable and enjoyable. So getting straight into it, I want to start by saying one thing. And that is, romance is not just about the characters loving each other. I know that'll sound weird, but bear with me, it'll make sense soon. So what I mean by that is that romance can't just be two characters talking about how much they love each other and making out, having sex, all that kind of stuff. That is not romance in a book. And I want you to keep in mind that this video isn't just about tips for a romance novel, it's about romance in novels. So this may or may not apply to you. I feel like it would either way, but this is stuff that you can either take on board or disregard. I think it'll help you. Romance can involve everything, and that's right from the characters meeting each other to start with, to going on dates, to having casual conversations that don't even seem romantic, right up to the end when the story peaks and they come together, or maybe they come together sooner in the book. The point I'm trying to make here is that romance needs to involve all of the interaction between the two characters. The romance needs to be everything that works towards the culmination of those characters coming together. That's what I'm trying to say, and that's something you should keep in mind with every interaction that you write between those two characters. The important thing to note is that the relationship, like characters, needs to have an arc. It needs to have a starting point, and you need to know where you want that relationship to basically work towards, and the story between those two characters needs to be working towards that. The relationship needs to arc, it needs to have development. Like, it can't just be two characters meeting each other and the guy saying, "Oh man, that girl's just the best girl in the world, I love her," and then the girl saying, "Yeah, I think I love that guy as well." Boom, they're together. That's not an enjoyable read. Whatever you're working towards with that romance, that culmination needs to be a result of what happens in the middle. So the main substance of your writing needs to be developing that relationship towards the culmination, towards the end result of that relationship. That is how you avoid the sin of insta-romance. People hate insta-romance, and your book will be criticized for that if you do that. To summarize what insta-romance is, it's when two characters meet each other and are instantly in love at first sight. That is not sorry, but it's just not realistic, and us as readers, we've picked up on that, and no one likes that anymore. I don't know if anyone even did to start off with, but it's something that we're identifying now, and it's something you definitely need to avoid. I've said it 100 times, and I'll say it again. You need to also avoid doing a love triangle if you want your protagonist to be a likable character. If you want the reader to like the protagonist, you need to avoid having them have this situation where they're like, I don't know which of these two people I love. That makes that character seem really self-centered and selfish, and it's just not something that anyone is tolerating anymore. You can do love triangles, but it's really hard to execute, and you need to make sure you're doing it in a way that the protagonist or the person stuck in the middle of that triangle is very aware of themselves and knows exactly what they need to be working towards, instead of just basically saying through the majority of the book, I don't know which person to choose between. I don't know which person to choose out of this person and this person. That is not good writing. There needs to be conflict for the romance. This is just as important for romance as it is for every other kind of story. Like every story, there needs to be conflict, and that needs to be represented in a relationship as well. There needs to be something that is either preventing the relationship from happening, preventing those two people from being together, or if they are together, there needs to be something that is preventing them from staying together. That is what will separate your book from the other books. And which one of those two things you choose kind of depends on your story specifically, so I can't tell you which of those to do because that just, it depends on your story. The underlying message here is that you need to be realistic. Avoid the situation where, just as an example, there's the ugly girl who sees a really hot guy and she's in love with that guy, and then one day he just walks in and goes, "Wow, she's beautiful, I really want to be with her, I'm in love with her." Bam, instant romance. Avoid that. That is not realistic. You want to be realistic. Falling in love with someone comes as a result of something, and that something needs to be written about, not just put on one page in one paragraph. That is why you're a writer and why you're doing this. The relationship needs to have an arc. So them falling in love needs to be a result of something, and you need to make that something take basically a storyline and not just happen. Really hope I'm not making this sound too complicated. I hope this all makes sense. If you have any questions, of course, you can ask me in the comments below, and I'm happy to describe this in a bit more detail. Something else to keep in mind as well is that you don't just want the relationship to be affected by the outside world and other minor characters. You want that relationship to have an effect on the outside world and other minor characters as well, especially if the book you're writing is a romance book. That needs to be the main, basically the anchor of the story. That relationship needs to be kind of, just imagine tendrils reaching out and kind of touching other characters and other scenarios, and it needs to have an effect on those characters and those scenarios. That is how you make romance in a book really interesting. Another point I would like to make is that those two, I'm assuming it's two characters involved in this relationship, they need to be flawed. The main sin that writers do is that they'll have one character who's flawed and one character who's perfect, and the flawed character is usually the protagonist who's trying to get the attention of the perfect one. The perfect one needs to be flawed, and there needs to be a reason that the reader would think, maybe this person isn't right for this person. You want there to be that uncertainty. That's basically all there is to it, really. I mean, I'm not going to drag this video out and hammer you with tips and basically guidelines for writing romance. I just want you to keep these key points in mind when you write that romance, because your story can kind of shape this relationship. I just want to summarize everything I've said basically. Think of the relationship as another character who needs an arc. This relationship needs to arc. It needs to have a point where it starts to go upwards, and then there will be conflict, and then there'll be the climax. And that can be separate to the actual main storyline as well. If it's not a romance novel, this can be happening in the background. It can be happening as a result of the plot of the actual book itself. You want the relationship to be just as interesting as the characters. Think of the relationship as a separate entity. And for God's sake, guys, be realistic. Try to be realistic with these. Even if it's a fantasy book, don't have a fantasy relationship, because the way romance in books is interesting to the reader is if we can relate to it. So we can't relate to something that is completely bullshit. No insta romances. No. Bad writer. Bad. That's basically all there is to it. So if you have any questions about anything I've said, make sure you leave me a comment, show me some love, give me a like. All my social media links are below. You can ask me any questions on my Tumblr, Twitter, or Goodreads. And that's it for today. I'll see you in next week's writing tip video. By the way, guys, keep an eye out for some videos I have coming soon as well. I have one where it's not like my self-publishing versus traditional publishing video. It will be a video of me talking about my self-publishing experience. Not to promote self-publishing, but just so you have an idea of what I did and what I went through and what I'm expecting going forward. And that might actually help any self-publishers out there, anyone who wants to self-publish. So make sure you subscribe so that you can see that one too. Alrighty guys, bye. Bye.